For centuries, the possibility of human flight had been one of the world's greatest unsolved mysteries. Today, this mystery is a definite reality due to the perseverance and bravery of countless aviation pioneers, including the Wright brothers. The Wright brothers lived in a time where more modern technologies were being developed, such as the telephone, electric lighting, power transmission, automobiles, radio, phonograph, and motion pictures.
Otto Lilienthal was born in Pomerania, Germany on May 23, 1848. After Otto served in the Franco-Prussian War of 1870 through 1871, he published a book with 20 years of his research titled Bird Flight as the Basis of Aviation. In his book, he mainly discussed the basic principles of the curved wing. On August 9, 1896, Lilienthal died of a broken spine when his glider nosedived into the ground. His last words were, "Sacrifices must be made."
Octave was born in Paris, France on February 18, 1832. He believed in a cooperative approach to the advancement of science. He worked internationally with others in aviation and helped many such as the Wright brothers in their efforts. He never patented his inventions and offered his findings to whoever seemed interested. The Wrights would share their own discoveries and experiments with him, and Chanute worked as their mentor. He witnessed the early Wright flights such as the 1902 glider and the 1904 and 1905 powered flyer.
Samuel Pierpont Langley was born in Roxbury, Massachusetts on August 22, 1834. After watching a few of Langley's successful experiments, the U.S. War Department funded a project for Langley to build a model capable of carrying a man. However, a problem occurred during the launch and the aerodrome crashed into the Potomac River. After the failed attempt, people continued to ridicule Langley until his death. However, this changed when the Wright brothers achieved the impossible at Kitty Hawk in 1903.
Wilbur Wright was born on April 16, 1867 in Millville, Indiana, while his brother, Orville, was born on August 19, 1871 in Dayton. Their parents had 7 children, including twins named Otis and Ida, who were born between the two brothers and died during infancy. Their father, Milton, was a minister who became a bishop of the United Brethren Church. Orville became interested in mechanics while he was very young, and his first serious technical interest was his printing press. Orville took up a serious hobby in printing in 1884, and in 1888, he and Wilbur designed and built a more professional printing press. It was the first time they used the historic name, the Wright brothers. Papers that they worked on included West Side News, which later became the Evening Item. They maintained their printing press until 1899 when they sold it to Ed Sines. After they sold their printing company, the Wright brothers opened a bicycle repair shop and soon began manufacturing their own bikes. Their knowledge with bicycle engineering is what led them to their success in flight. In 1895, they started producing their own line of bicycles and opened businesses in 5 different locations in Dayton. By 1895, the Wright Cycle Company introduced their first model bicycle. Their best model bicycle was the Van Cleve, which sold for $65. They moved their company in 1897 to 1127 West 3rd Street. This is where they built all their early airplanes and gliders. The first thing that the Wright brothers realized was the problem of control in 3 directions. Their solution was the concept of warping, or the control of wings by twisting them in a movable aileron. In 1899, they built a model glider which successfully flew as a kite. They went to the sand hills near Kitty Hawk, North Carolina, to test gliders. In 1901, they devised a wind tunnel in Dayton which they used for their aviation experiments. They returned to Kitty Hawk in 1902 where they performed nearly 1,000 flights to perfect their control system. When they started working on powered flight, they used a small 4-cylinder engine and a high-efficiency air screw for propulsion. They brought their new plane to Kitty Hawk in September 1903. Due to weather conditions, they were unable to test until December 17th, when Orville piloted the plane for 12 seconds in a 20-foot flight. Later in the day, Wilbur piloted it for 59 seconds in an 852-foot flight. During the next 2 years, they perfected their design and flying range. In 1906, they were granted a U.S. patent for their flying machine. They were soon negotiating with Britain and France, and in 1908, the U.S. War Department awarded them a contract for a 40-mile-per-hour plane, that could fly for 125 miles with a pilot and one passenger. In 1909, Wilbur began demonstrating their machine for officials in Europe, and Orville did the same in the United States. They began their American Wright Company in November 1909, where they trained pilots and continued perfecting their design.
The Wright brothers first created an exhibition and stunt flying team in 1910. In June of 1910, the Wright exhibition team had its first performance in Indiana. The team stayed in business until November 1911 after the deaths of several team members. In the summer of 1910, the Wright Company introduced the Wright Model B. Unlike early aircrafts, the Wright Model B had a conventional tail, giving it better stability, and it rested on wheels instead of skids. The Model Bs were produced from 1910 to 1914. In March 31, 1911, the U.S. Congress made their first appropriation for military aviation. In October 1911, the Army used the Model B for the first military bomb site in bomb-dropping trials at Maryland. Some major changes the Wrights made in the Model B was to replace their own engine with the Rosenberger engine and their wing warping system by adding ailerons on the edges of the wings. Also, in October 1911, Orville made a small glider with the automatic stabilizer he had designed and tested it at Kitty Hawk. There, Orville broke all gliding records which had held for 10 years. However, Lawrence Sperry soon made Orville's system obsolete when he created an automatic stabilizer that eventually formed the basis for all future automatic stabilizers. Until Orville sold the Wright Company in 1915, the company produced several models such as the Model G and Model L. The Model G of 1913 to 1914 was the Wright Company's only flying boat, which was designed by Grover Loening under Orville's supervision. It was the first Wright Company product with an enclosed cockpit. The Model L of 1916 was a one-seated airplane built to fill the U.S. Army's request for a scouting machine. It was the last aircraft manufactured by the Wright Company, and even though Orville had sold the company by then, he may have had some influence in its construction. One of the Wrights' biggest competitors in the aviation industry was Glenn Curtiss. Glenn Curtiss, like the Wright brothers, also owned a bicycle shop, didn't attend college, was naturally shy, and an expert at hands-on kind of thinking. In 1908, Glenn Curtiss made the first publicly announced flight in the U.S. on his Junebug at Hammondsport, New York. He also was the first to sell an airplane commercially. Conflict between the Wright brothers and Curtiss first emerged over the patent the Wrights made in 1906. In January 1914, the U.S. Court of Appeals handed down a permanent injunction that prevented Curtiss from manufacturing or exhibiting his aircrafts in the U.S. without a license from Orville, which included paying a 20% royalty. Curtiss made several attempts to negotiate with Orville in lowering the royalties, but failed. Controversy was also made over the stabilizing system used in Curtiss's aircrafts. Unlike the Wrights' wing warping system, ailerons were flaps which operated separately from the wings and rudder. The conflict over the patent ruined the image of the Wrights. In 1914, anti-Wright sentiment among the public was high, and newspapers such as the Aeronautics said the case was overblown by Orville. Chanute, the Wrights' mentor, even explained in New York World in 1909 how he admired the Wrights' success but was sorry to see how they spent all their time suing instead of spending their time improving their invention.
In April 1912, Wilbur became very ill on a business trip to Boston. After he returned to Dayton, he was diagnosed with typhoid. At age 45, he died on May 30th after slipping in and out of consciousness. Orville took over the Wright Company after Wilbur's death and later sold it in 1915 to continue private study. Orville made his last flight as a pilot in 1918 in a 1911 Model B. He retired and served on various boards and committees, including the National Advisory Committee for Aeronautics and the National Aeronautics and Space Administration.